Hello, BookTube, it's Lynette here, and this is take 3 of the week 3 update. The cat messed up the last take, and the first take I messed up, so third time lucky, hey? Seemed to work last week. Right, so this week I have been continuing my read-along of Game of Thrones. I am a day behind, so I need to read yesterday's chapter when I finish filming this and editing it and putting it up, along with the 4 chapters for the weekend. But again, still enjoying it. Again, I know what's coming, I know what happens, so it's not a chore for me to read it. I'm staying fairly connected to the story. So I'm doing quite well with that one. I'm also continuing on with my read-along of the first book in the Witcher series, The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. Again, it's short stories, and in between each short story there's a small chapter which is set in the present day of the time the book's set in, and told from the main character's point of view. Still really enjoying it, still really liking the main character, and I'm actually more and more certain that as soon as February comes around, then I would definitely be shelling out the pennies for book 2 so I can continue the read along of the series. So last weekend when I spoke to you as well, I also had a book on the go called Diamond Mask by Julian May. It's a science fiction novel set on Earth and a little bit in space, but it's the second book in Julian May's Galactic Milieu series, and basically in the previous book, humans have discovered that there are more to our brains than we initially thought, and we have all of these powers. We have psychokinesis, we can speak to people using our minds, and we can do that over great distances. We can certainly do that planet to planet in some cases, depending on how strong your powers are. You can create things from thin air, just using the elements around you. So yes, it's all very interesting. Also, because it's set not very far in the future from now. I think Diamond Mask, the one I've just finished, actually finished in 2077, 2078. And the book before this, Jack the Bodiless, started in 2013, roughly. And at the time that the book was written, because the books were written in the 80s and early 90s, obviously 2013 was still quite a way off. One of the things that intrigues me about this book is not just the fact that humans have discovered they have these mind powers, is the technological advances that Julian May was predicting. So e-readers, driverless cars, mobile telephones, which I suppose mobile telephones were starting to come on the scene back then, but not... at that time, I don't think anybody even dreamt of smartphones, and she's talking about smartphones. It's almost as though she had a time machine herself and had gone forward to see what was happening, and yes, put it all in her books. So in some ways they're a bit scary, because you're reading about all these things that she wrote about 30 years ago, and they're all coming to fruition now. In some cases, they're coming to fruition a bit earlier than they are in real life. But yes, quite scary in that respect. But the Diamond Mask is the continuation of this story, and although this time we're not so much following the Remillard family, we are following a young girl called Dorothea MacDonald. She will become known as Diamond Mask later in the book, and the book is that story as well. But the main story is Dorothea's growing up. When we first meet her in the book, she is not what is termed as operant, so one with powers. She has powers, but they're latent. She can't access them. And I apologise for my cat in the background cleaning herself. Lovely, thank you. So yes, she is operant, but she's latent, so she can't access any of the powers. And this book is the story of how she begins to access the powers, and what happens after she starts to access the powers. And obviously her growing up. Again, there is some points of view from the Remoulade family, because these books are all told from Rogi Remoulade's point of view. They're his memoirs, basically, that he's writing. And he's writing these memoirs because he has a family ghost. There is a what he calls the family ghost, who comes along and tells him when he has to do things and when he should leave things alone, and is also encouraging him to write the memoirs. And we find out right at the beginning of this book, part of the reason that the family ghost is getting him to write his memoirs is because the family ghost doesn't know who a character is. There is a character in this book who is only known by the name Fury. We have no idea who this character is at all in real life, or in the story, obviously real life story. And it turns out that the family ghost doesn't know either, and he wants to know because he's dying. So this happens quite early in the book, so it's not really any spoilers if you do pick up this series. So it's the continuation of Rogi, but obviously telling of Dorothea's growing up, and also how she then becomes known as Diamond Mask. It was a solid oh, hang on, just need to check how many stars I gave it. Solid 5 out of 5. I can't believe I forgot that. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Because again, through this time, there's not so much world building in this book as there was in Jack the Bodiless, because it's all been set up for you. You understand operancy and latency, and you know who all the other races are that are in this book. So you don't need so much background work. So it is more the laying of the foundations of Dorothea's character, and how she then becomes involved with the Remoulade family, and also how she becomes known as Diamond Mask, because she is Diamond Mask. But that's quite easy to tell as you go through the book. And the last line of the book, the last line of the book. I was advised when I picked up this series that once I'd finished Diamond Mask, I should go back and read her other series set in the same world, the Many Coloured Lands saga. No, the Exiles of the Pliocene saga, I think it is, which starts with the Many Coloured Lands. Before I read Magnificat, which is the third and final book in the Galactic Milieu series. But that last line of Diamond Mask, I can't go back and read another 4 books before I read Magnificat and find out if what I've read is true. So Magnificat I've already downloaded and is set. I'm hoping to pick that up at some point this week. So Diamond Mask, excellent. Still thoroughly recommend this series. It will blow your mind a little bit, as I say. And yes, so we'll look forward to that. I've finished 2 other books this week, and they're both books that I started and finished after I uploaded last week. So the first one is Chasing Perfect by Susan Mallory. This is the second book in the Romanceopoly challenge that I'm doing this year. And I started that on Saturday evening, finished it in the early hours of Sunday morning, I think. And it's a romance novel. There is a happy ending, and it's the story of a young woman who moves to a town where there aren't many single men available to marry. And she's been employed by the town council, to try and attract new businesses to the town, and specifically businesses that would then attract men to the town. So it's her story and how she falls in love. Now, she does fall in love with a member of the town who's already there. So it's quite sweet. And both characters have their flaws and have their histories, which are well thought out, well dealt with. And I gave this book a good 4 stars. If you just want something light, and I wouldn't say light and fluffy, there is a little bit of intensity there, but there's a little bit of misunderstanding at the end. There's the angst. It is a book by numbers type of thing, but it is well written. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and I gave that a good 4 stars. And I will probably look at picking up more of Susan Mallory's books in the future, because even though this isn't the normal, it's more women's lit than romance, but it's still romance, and I tend to go for the heavier romance novels, so the more Mills and Boon the better, but not technically Mills and Boon, but yes. Yeah, so those are the sorts of books that I like, and yes, I will read more from her. So that's Sweet Street knocked off on my Romanceopoly challenge. And the other book that I finished this week is called River Wild by Samantha Towell. Samantha Towell is one of my favourite romance authors. I discovered her a few years ago when she was releasing her Storm series, the first one being The Mighty Storm, which is a romance novel about a rocker who meets up with his first love after quite some many years apart, and their love story, how they get back together and how they overcome all the flaws and problems in his personality, and also problems that she has as well, because she's not great. But yes, so that was the first book of hers I read, and I've loved her ever since. River Wild is her newest book that was released it was supposed to be released on Monday, but Amazon, in all their loveliness, made the book live early on Sunday. And I was very kindly given by the author an ARC copy of the book. Unfortunately, due to problems with the file, she couldn't get the e-ARC sent out until Sunday lunchtime. So Sunday lunchtime I was frantically checking my Kindle, because she sent it direct to Kindle, trying to get this book to appear, and it wasn't until an hour later that it actually showed up after she'd notified us. I then ran a bath and sat in the bath for 2.5 hours and read it from start to finish. River Wild is the story of a woman who escapes from her abusive husband. He is physically abusive and violent towards her. I didn't really get a tone of verbal abuse, but I suspect that was there as well. And she moves to a small town in America, where she meets, in Texas, America, I think, she meets her neighbour called River Wild. River is also a victim of child abuse, and he's isolated himself. Even though he still lives in the town where he grew up, he has isolated himself from the rest of the town because of what happened, how he managed to stop the abuse, which the town don't know that he stopped it. And I can't say any more than that, because it will spoil the beginning of the book a little bit for you. And yes, he's withdrawn and sullen and doesn't really want to know her, and she just wants to try and fit in a new town, but also keep to herself. She does really well, I think, but it's their love story. It's how he overcomes all his issues and how she manages to learn to trust, and their love story. And again, it's really sweet. It's a bit of a heartbreaker, it's a bit of a tearjerker. There is more than one moment in the book where you are hurting and crying, and I did feel all the feels. I was in tears, I was laughing, I was smiling, I was angry. So yes, so there were all the feels, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And again, I gave that one a solid 4 stars. And I managed to read it just before Amazon sent it live, so I could get my review, because I did promise that I would review it. I managed to get my review up straight away as well. So thank you to Samantha Towell for sending that to me. I couldn't resist. I couldn't wait until my library got the copy in, because who knows when that will be, because they only have paperback copies. But I've picked up Summoned to 13th Grave by Dorinda Jones. It is the 13th and final book in her Charlie Davidson series. It's the book where everything culminates that you've been reading. I can't really tell you very much other than it's about her, and it's about Rays and Uncle Ubi and Cookie and everybody else. Everybody else is there. They're all in it. There's some supernatural things going on, which they have to sort out. Charlie is also a private detective, so there's a murder she needs to solve as well. And it's all of that, happening. Plus, we need to know how a certain something is going to happen in the future. And yes, I'm just over a quarter of the way through. I'm nearly halfway through it, actually, and there's so many threads to wrap up. I'm hoping she can do it justice. But I am thoroughly enjoying it. I'm getting all the snark and the sass from Charlie that we had in the previous 12 books. And I'm thinking that I'm probably going to finish that today, if not tomorrow morning. So watch out for my review on that one next week, my thoughts on that one next week. And other than that, like I said, when I was talking about Diamond Mask, aiming to start Magnificat this week. I have rolled and lined up my next Romanceopoly book, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. Oh yes, no, I know what it is. It's one of the Black Dagger Brotherhood Legacy series. I think it's the third in the series, by J.R. Ward. So I should probably start that one, and then that'll be 3 books for January, and then I'll need to find out how I'm going to pace myself for the rest of the year to complete the rest of the challenges. So that's been my reading for week 3. I hope you're all reading lots, and I will speak to you again next week. Bye.